You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Show, where we discuss key political economic developments as they affect households. Our focus today will be leveraging PPPs, which means public-private partnerships, to transform Nigeria's infrastructure landscape. And my guest is Mr. Femi Awofala, CEO and founder Brickstone. Nice to have you, Femi.
Nice to have you too, Mr. Otto.
And it's interesting that we're having this physically. We always have this conversation on the virtual platform.
Exactly.
Nice to have you.
Nice to have you too.
And before we begin the conversation, let's give you a recap of key socioeconomic stories from last week. Nigeria's total public debt stock as at March 31st, 2022 was 41.60 trillion naira or $100.07 billion according to the Debt Management Office. Also last week, according to the official data from the National Bureau of Statistics, foreign direct investment inflows slumped minus 56.74% quarter on quarter from $358 million in fourth quarter 2021 to $155 million in first quarter 2022. Now let's move on to our conversation today. And of course, if you're joining us, it's the Economy and Politics Show. Our conversation is leveraging public-private partnerships to transform Nigeria's infrastructure landscape. And my guest is Mr. Femi Awofala, the CEO and founder of Brickstone.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Femi, let's first begin with the area of the public-private partnerships, creating the enabling environment for this to thrive in Nigeria. We know we have the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, which is helping to do that at the federal level. But at the subnational level, we need to see some traction in terms of activities that can encourage that. What is the pathway to achieving this scale, in terms of scale at the subnational level? We've seen a lot has happened at the federal level.
Thank you so much, Mr. Otto. And thank you again for having me here in your program. Yeah. It's important to understand that public-private partnerships are a meeting of the mind between the private sector and the public sector towards a common goal of developing an infrastructure project or any utility asset in itself. Having said that, we've seen over the years the passage and the role the ICRC had played in a number of infrastructure projects in Africa, in Nigeria in itself. And we believe that there's high time we now start getting projects done at the subnational level. Yeah. And that includes the states, the local government, the municipalities, and a number of other local districts in itself. And this is where a number of social infrastructure projects are embedded, the likes of private, public-private hospitals, PPP hospitals, having PPP in schools, having PPP in prisons, university campuses, having accommodation units and things. And we believe the role actually starts from each of the state governments having a framework upon which public-private partnerships can be executed. There's a National PPP Act in itself that allows the ICRC to do what they have to do, and the process is clear on the outline business case, the fine line business case, and also the procurement process in itself. A key thing that a number of states need to start doing going forward is to invest heavily in the human capital on the public sector side. Yeah. And that human capital should basically be able to find out what is the need for this proposed concession that we want to have on PPP. Yeah. Two, is there a demand for it? Is there a value for it? Is there a viability gap to be met? Yeah. Also, it's important for capacity building across the public sector to ensure that whatever project is being put out there, there's enough traction in the market for investors to be able to accept it and for them to be able to see it as a bankable project they can also put their time and effort and investment in. So in a nutshell, I'll just say that, first of all, states should have the framework upon which PPPs should thrive, meaning that they should have a PPP Act in their states. I know Lagos State has one upon which the Lekki concession project was done. I also know that Kaduna State is developing something like that because they are also doing a number of renewable energy projects on the PPP side. So it's an inevitable resource for government to allow private sector to thrive and help to develop this critical infrastructure. But they cannot do that until there is an enabling legal and institutional framework upon which they can engage. Now, without this framework, we've seen bilateral negotiations in some states or in some subnational organizations or subnational institutions where you come in, you have a bilateral negotiation, but when things comes to shove, when the issues are now coming to bear, as a private sector, if you don't have the level of institutional backing of your agreements or your arrangements with the public sector, because public sector come today, they go tomorrow. Elections are just coming
on the corner now.
Like that. So it's critical for every type of subnational government, even though you're having a bilateral negotiation, to at least have some level of what we call an implementation agreement with the state itself regarding your project that ring fences all what you are doing and gives the state's National Assembly even some level of obligation to assent to or approve, whatever agreements you have with the state.
Yeah, very clear. I mean, you talked about the issue of ring fencing. I know, look at Nigeria, like you rightly said, when election cycle again, policy consistency, the need for sanctity of contracts is very, very important, which we'll try to push as a narrative as we see prospective political office holders emerge. I mean, guaranteeing contracts and agreements, concessions is very important. And if you look at some projects in Nigeria, you see that there's been a challenge there. For example, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and even the issues around the Murtala Mohammed Airport in the past, there were issues around that sanctity of contract. So will these laws also help strengthen that? And also, what are the additional things that need to be done? Because you are in this space. You see Africa Finance Corporation, other top multilateral institutions, financial institutions who want to support. They are always conscious of the sanctity of contracts in the country.
Yeah, so that is really clear. I'll put it this way, right? So the issue of sanctity of contract is basically the legality. And so the first is, who are you engaging with as a private sector?
Yeah.
You have to be able to, clarify as a private sector player, engaging with the public sector on what we call a PPP arrangement, right? Does this person have the right to engage with me? Yeah, you can be talking to a state government. You might be talking to an agency. You might be talking to a ministry. Yeah. So there needs to be clarity on which counterparty should actually be dealing with.
Do it, yeah.
Yeah, the transaction in the sector. For example, we have a very clear electricity sector act, and it allows private investments and things. But you may be doing that kind of a project and you may be talking to the wrong counterparty. And because that counterparty, because of its own objectives or selfish reasons, engages with you, signs a contract with you, which it doesn't have any right to in the first place. So I'll put that aside in one way. The second part is the fact that the nature of the transaction in itself requires you to ensure that back to this issue of legal framework, right? Make sure that the sector which you are competing, if it is in the power sector, there should be a legal framework upon which you as a private sector can engage. If it's the transport sector, the roads, the rail, or whatever. And I think the Nigerian government at the federal level have done enough work to allow private sector participation in the power sector, in the renewable energy sector, in the roads and
highways. There's been this highway arrangements too.
Things. Yeah. So basically, you have really done all what you need. Now, the issue now could also arise where you have a change in government.
Yes.
And that really has to do with the strength of your concession agreement. So, and that agreement, if it's not properly drafted, if you don't have the right personnel or professionals to advise you appropriately, your arrangements may not transcend beyond the cycle of the government in power. Yeah. So it's key for such organizations or such private sector players to be able to see the right what's it called?
Mix and framework.
The right mix or the right framework upon which they can engage. Now the other part of it is when you also want government you want to go on a PPP, we always believe that African governments, Nigerian governments are getting leveraged by the day.
Yeah.
They're having so much indebtedness. So those days, we used to say something like, okay, provide government guarantee, government must provide some level of LCs to whatever you are doing to guarantee your minimum revenue. I think we need to try and innovate more, right? And going forward, we see as Brickstone that, you don't want to enter into transaction with government whereby government is not doing anything. They are only providing you the asset or the opportunity or the right to engage develop, on this. Yes. So if you tell government to bring money or to bring investments or co-investments or guarantees, they may say yes, right? They may agree, but you can also look at the government's balance sheet, look at the government you are dealing with, look at their total, what's it called?
Internally generated
revenues and everything.
And potentials.
And they can't afford it, right? So you have to develop some ingenious solutions and create a structure upon which those engagements with, or those PPP arrangements does not have any government capital injection in any way, such that the right to terminate the contract for government is not a right because they don't have to meet the obligations, but it's just because, maybe you are not performing your own duty as a private sector. So you want to put all the pressure on yourself. You want to look at the opportunity and just execute. Yeah, just execute.
Yeah. Very important. This takes me to capacity and skills, which is very important. If I look at the Brickstone research, it showed that about 80% of the major entrepreneurs who show a desire to lead development of infrastructure lack that skills and capacity. So what is Brickstone doing to help build this capacity for what is now termed infrapreneurs?
Correct, yes. So we in 2018, we looked at the whole environment and we saw a very clear gap that, clients come to our offices, they want to try and develop infrastructure projects, but you as a consultant and an advisor, you're actually the one pulling the weight. You're actually the one giving all the instructions on what to do. And it's, even when they get in front of investors, it becomes very, very difficult for them to actually articulate what they want to try and do.
Yeah.
So for us, we saw that the fact that, a number of big time, projects, even in the middle market, which like the healthcare, your renewable energy, your mini grids and things, you still have Africans and Nigerians compete within it. But the most they can do is to access grants. They don't have the capacity internally to be able to access long-term funding.
Which is very important, for infrastructure.
Except they partner with maybe a foreign institution or an affiliate of one of the offshore companies looking to come to Africa. But we say no. Africa must be built by Africans.
Yeah.
So we have taken our time to design a program over a 6 to 9 month period, which we call the Brickstone Infrastructure Acceleration Program, that allows young entrepreneurs who are doing infrastructure projects for the first time, we call them infrapreneurs, to be able to come and learn and see behind the scene what actually translates in the early development stage, the pre-financing stage, the financing stage, and the post-financing stage, irrespective of whatever project you're doing. And we believe this is what government needs to see. Every time you go to these seminars, the events and things, and you keep hearing, government needs to create an enabling environment for the private sector, right? You hear that nice phrase.
It's always a very important
nice phrase to hear, but that private sector does not exist. Because there are people who are just looking for contracts. They want to just do a deal, do a government contract.
But a nation needs a vibrant private sector to grow.
We do. But the question now is this: does the private sector, are they built? Do they have the right capacity to engage investors? Remember, it's a very simple cycle. You as private sector, you meet government. Government gives you an opportunity or a right to develop a utility or an infrastructure. You take all that information, you go give to an investor. An investor says, oh, they've given me a right to do this and blah, blah, blah. But you cannot convince that investor, right? So we are able to help you to look at what are the issues on de-risking. And you find about what most of those entrepreneurs do is they want to say, oh, I want to go and do a bankable feasibility. It's a no-no. It's a myth. There's nothing like that. What we have is the bankability resides with the lender. He's the one to tell you your project is
bankable or not.
Not you. And you, in presenting to the lender, you must take yourself and put yourself in the lender's shoes and ensure that all the bankability issues that the lender will ever ask for.
Are cleared and addressed, yeah.
So the essence of Brickstone now is the fact that we want to develop 1,000 entrepreneurs every year.
1,000 entrepreneurs.
Yes,
that's remarkable.
Into the African capital market, developing whatsoever project or the other, and allowing them to be able to have the right skill sets to be able to what we call execute their deal. Yes, some of them might still require a number of financial advisors, legal advisors, and things, but we want to bring in that level of confidence within those entrepreneurs in itself.
Yeah, I mean, this is really remarkable, Mr. Femi. The capacity and skills are very important if we're going to get the right kind of projects that lenders or financials can see as bankable.
Correct. I just also put in, remember we had an issue with AMCON in 2018.
Yes.
So 2012, 2010, 11, 12, when AMCON was created, a lot of loans were given.
Yeah.
So what we're also trying to do is the fact that Africa keeps talking about we need $100 billion.
Yes. You keep hearing that report. We need $100 billion every year.
Every year.
To address the infrastructure gap.
Remember, who are you giving that $100 billion to? You're giving it to entrepreneurs.
Yes.
If they don't have the capacity to manage capital, right? It's not their consultants that will come and you are giving the money to. It's not their financial advisor. It's not their EIA consultant. It's not their ESG. It's not their EPC or consultant. It is you, the entrepreneur. It is you that will enter into negotiations at the end of the day. So we feel that for Africa not to have the next set of, let me call it credit crisis on the infrastructure space, it is high time we start building entrepreneurs now to be able to engage appropriately, with their counterparties, so that if that $100 billion comes, or $200 billion every year, it falls into the right hands, and it doesn't get wasted into non-performing loans or or huge
debt crisis.
And we're having another AMCON, to deal with infrastructure projects.
Definitely. And like we've discussed, we're in the election cycle.
Correct.
We've seen the emergence of various presidential candidates from the major parties. We've seen gubernatorial candidates emerge also. So we're looking at what should be the core focus of this prospective political office holders. It has to do with infrastructure, because like you said, you're building entrepreneurs, but of course policy makers, people that will implement the policies, are very key. Because if you look at most of the agendas or campaigns, it's about infrastructure. We increase power, we'll do roads, bridges, and all that, but you do have to create that vehicle for achieving this.
Correct. Okay, so thank you for that question. So number one is the fact that you need to stop the bleed. The whole economy is hemorrhaging right now. You need to try and put a stop to one, unnecessary wastages that you find in the recurrent expenditure in the government. You need to really prune that. They've talked about this onion story reports.
Yes, Orasoye.
Yes,
yes, you need to review the federal civil service structure.
Or, try as much as possible. And I think it is possible. Because remember, we had COVID, right? Government was still working. People were at home. We are on strike. Lecturers are on strike. Government is still working. So that tells you that if you actually restructure the federal government workforce in itself, you will basically get huge savings. The second thing is the macroeconomic issues. Exchange rate is not so favorable.
It's a big challenge.
It's a big challenge for any foreign direct investor that wants to come in. Inflation, you need to put structures into at least having stability. So for us, for foreign direct investors, it's not so much of the high or low, right? It's basically how stable is it? And what is the trend? Are we seeing stability, and are we seeing stability to the positive side, right? So that's the second thing on the macroeconomic. So as a new government, what I would say and what I would do is the fact that quite a number of projects are probably with the federal government having a counterparty, where federal government has obligations towards those projects. They need to quickly look at them urgently and see if they can actually, divest from those opportunities, whereby, it's privatization, you have the NNPCs, you have pipelines all over the space and things. So we need to run
even the rail and various other infrastructure.
Exactly. We need to run a very aggressive, privatization program of most of the state-owned enterprises. It's I know that most people say it, they don't have the political will to do it, right? You need to just do it now, and remove your hands from a number of them. Nigerian Railway Corporation, we don't have anything we're doing there. Ajaokuta Steel, we don't have any business there.
Yeah.
Look at all the other steel rolling mills you have scattered around Nigeria. If you go to the BP database, you see
there's so much of the projects in cycle. Yeah.
And the BP themselves need to bring in huge capacity. I don't think they have the capacity to really tender those projects, adequately, and efficiently in itself. Not because I doubt what they have today, but the rate at which they need to move is so fast.
Yeah.
We've been talking about NNPC privatizing refineries for years. Come on, just do it and just remove your hands from it.
Yeah.
Whatever anybody says. But the question now is do it to the right kind of people.
Transparency and
the
process has to be
and the process has to be and that's why we are here today to build those entrepreneurs to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. The other thing I think a new government should do in Nigeria regarding the infrastructure space is basically to deepen more of the subnational. So what happens is, and have what we call a regional infrastructure master plan.
If you look at the Southwest, the Odua, they have a kind of arrangement. So they should
federal government
build
should
that.
buy into it.
Okay.
My point is that it's very impossible for the Nigeria, as big as we are, as a 200 million population country, to have one infrastructure master plan. We need to take that infrastructure and regionalize it. Have a Southeast infrastructure master plan. Have a South-South infrastructure master plan. South-South-Southeast, they have massive waterways. They can do a lot of wind farms. They can do a lot of things, seaports.
Can leverage gas for power.
They can leverage gas for power.
Yeah.
The Northeast, they have a lot of farm, a lot of sunlight. They can do a lot of renewable energy infrastructure master plan. So I would say, and I'm quoting myself here, that we should just take the infrastructure needs of every region, and government should look at what the state governments are doing, integrate it to their own plan, and have a counterpart funding. Allow the states to take the lead, and government just provides the counterpart funding. So, okay, you know what, you want to do a regional railway within the Southeast, no problem. We like the idea. You go and concession.
Instead of government thinking for the routes, the regions should now plan it.
Take that planning themselves. Then you back it up. We say, okay, you know what, I'll fund you debt, not even equity. I don't even want the federal government to do anything like equity. Raise the bond and give them a loan. Let that loan occur on the same terms they will lend any senior lender or any bank itself. But we can the government can just come in as what we call a subordinated lender. So there are very numerous ways in which these things can be done. It just requires the right political will. As I said, let's start with privatization. And you can execute privatization in 1 year. Just get all those assets out of your hands. Right. Secondly, you look at what you have. What the states are doing. Stop doing a nice document, Nigeria Infrastructure Master Plan. You have it in nice PowerPoint.
But it's not integrating the regions.
You focus on the regions itself. Look at what they are doing in the states. Have meetings with them. Have engagement. Have town hall meetings, and say, you know what, we need an IBOM power. We need an IBOM deep sea port.
I like that. You just mentioned IBOM deep sea port. That's
so why should Port Harcourt be too busy? If you have an IBOM deep sea port, then take a rail line from there and push it to everywhere in the south, and that places
unlock economic opportunities.
The whole economy in the south in Nigeria itself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Femi Awofala. Definitely, with what you've said now, we'll begin to be monitoring all these candidates to see how their plans key into this. But you've said it, privatization of key state assets, long overdue, and also having regional infrastructure master plans can really help to unlock opportunities. And then, of course, we need to build the infrapreneurs, which Brickstone is helping, and you can work with other government agencies to do that and achieve that. Thank you very much, Mr. Femi Awofala, for the time. Nice to discuss leveraging public-private partnerships to transform Nigeria's infrastructure landscape. Thank you once again, Mr. Femi.
You're welcome.
And that was Mr. Femi Awofala, CEO and founder of Brickstone, giving us insights on how we can improve our infrastructure landscape in Nigeria through public-private partnerships. That will be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions on what we've discussed today, please send them to Ottoabasi.Abasiekong@proshare.co, and we'll be glad to respond to you. Also follow our social media platforms displayed on the screen. And we have all the stories, analysis, and reports around the economy covering infrastructure for you. All you need to do is to just continue to engage us via our website and platforms displayed on the screen. Till you come your way again, thank you for watching and have a nice day.